What's the most cathartic thing you've ever done? I only did it because I thought she was dying. My daughter was 17 when she collapsed at school during gym. One minute she was jogging laps, the next she was on the ground, struggling to breathe while her classmates circled around her in shock. I rushed to the hospital and sat by her side in the ER, waiting for someone to tell me what was going on. After a full day of tests, scans, and vague medical terms, a doctor finally pulled me aside and told me she had severe cardiomyopathy. Her heart was barely functioning. If it got worse, she'd need a transplant. But here's the part that knocked the air out of my lungs. He told me the wait list was long, her condition was rare for someone her age, and there was a good chance she wouldn't make it another year. She didn't know the details. I told her it was serious, but manageable. She gave me this small, shaky smile like she didn't believe me, then changed the subject. A few days later, she showed me this crumpled sheet of notebook paper she'd been working on from her hospital bed. Just stuff I want to do, you know, in case, she said, like it wasn't breaking my heart. It was 5 things long: watch the stars in the desert, make a real painting on a giant canvas, try sushi, ride in a hot air balloon, and kiss someone she really liked. That night, I stared at the list while she slept. My chest felt like it was being crushed. I decided right then that if time was all we had, I was going to give her everything I could in whatever time we had left. I picked up night shifts stocking shelves at a local supply warehouse, told Stacy I had late-night tutoring gigs at a community center. I'd come home at 4 a.m., sleep a couple hours, teach high school English all day, then start the cycle again. My body ached constantly. I started spacing out mid-class. Once I completely forgot what chapter we were on, and just stood there in front of my students, blinking like an idiot. The first thing we did was drive to Arizona. I didn't tell her why until we were pulling off the road into the middle of nowhere. I brought out this little blanket and a pair of cheap binoculars. The sky was so clear it didn't even look real. She didn't say much, just stared up with her mouth slightly open. I looked over at her and saw tears streaming down her face. She whispered, "Thank you," and I just nodded, because if I spoke, I would have lost it right there. Next came the sushi. She hated it, but she laughed the whole time. Then the painting, which we did on the driveway using a canvas I found on clearance, and a bucket of paint from the school's art room. She painted this wild, bright mess of stars and flowers, and signed it with her name and a little heart. But things were getting worse. She was tired all the time. Sometimes she'd just fall asleep in the middle of a sentence. One night, I heard a crash and found her on the kitchen floor. I carried her back to bed and sat there with her all night, my hands shaking, scared to close my eyes in case she didn't wake up again. Then she found my warehouse uniform in the laundry. She held it up and asked, "What's this?" I tried to lie again, said I just needed the money, but she saw right through me. She didn't push though. She just gave me this long, quiet look and walked away. Later that week, I found her notebook open on the coffee table. There was an entry that said, "I know I'm dying. I heard the doctor, but I also know what Dad's doing. I just want him to know I see it." I broke down, not loudly, just quietly, completely, like every crack in me finally split open. So I did one last thing. I emptied my savings and signed us up for a hot air balloon ride in New Mexico. The sun was rising, the air was freezing, and she was grinning like a little kid. Halfway through, she looked at me and said, "You know I know, right? About everything." I nodded. She leaned her head on my shoulder. "You made it all worth it." 2 weeks later, the hospital called. There was a heart. The surgery was high risk. We didn't know if she'd even make it off the table. I sat alone in that waiting room for 9 hours, staring at the same stain on the floor, feeling like time had stopped. When the surgeon finally walked in and said, "She's stable," I couldn't move. I couldn't even speak. I just cried, harder than I ever had in my life. It's been almost a year. She's alive. She's healthy. She starts college next fall. The list is still taped to her bedroom wall, and now it has 20 more things.